We go.
Welcome, everybody, and welcome to your Monday night. Thank you very much for joining us. It is a crazy night because Cubbie's wife is watching basketball. And so what that means is she promised she wouldn't have profanity, but beyond that, no, all bets are off. Well, she didn't promise the first part, but all bets are off. So if you hear something that doesn't sound like the three of us,
y'all know it's from
probably
we're
her.
from Iowa, and my wife, she's up there throwing hands already because it's halftime and it's close. So she shouts out, "It's not my fault, ladies and gentlemen."
Yeah, and then John's under snow.
Lots of snow.
So yeah, so you know it's just what it is right now. But we thank you very much for coming and joining us.
So tonight, guys, it is our monthly question and answer night, and I've got a variety of different questions that we'll be going through this evening. A lot of these came from different social media chat rooms out there. There we go. So we're going to be kind of going through. If you've got any questions you'd like to add to the list, either put it in the chat, and we'll either answer it tonight or we will put it in the list for next time, because we kind of keep a running list of questions and take some of the more interesting ones for each show. So, gentlemen, I think we're ready. If you guys are good to go.
Yeah, it's halftime.
Sure.
I'm good. My wife's she's calm.
Okay, let's get to our first one. First question for tonight, trussing. Is trussing for wedding DJs, is it dead? Because I've seen a lot of pictures in the different groups and such, and I'm not seeing trussing. Whether it's I-beam trussing or box trussing or triangle trussing, I'm not seeing it. Cubbie, is it dead? Yes or no? Go!
I think it is a little outdated. I mean, it's good for proms, and if you're doing large setups for proms, I think that's great. But I think might be overkill for weddings. But it all depends what you do. But I think for the most part, yeah, trussing is kind of moved as seen is come and gone.
Dan?
I'm going to disagree slightly. I'm definitely going to say that it's not where it was even 5 years ago. Definitely the hard, rigid box truss type of setup, I think that's really kind of gone by the wayside. What you're seeing a lot anymore is the collapsible style. Like I don't see a lot of people, unless they've just had it and want to keep it for some reason. I haven't seen a lot of people that are sticking with that. A lot of them are going to that collapsible option, which is really kind of helping. But I don't think there's a lot of great options for DJs who are doing moving heads to use anything else. Right. Like, so if you're still using that style, and there's a lot of power in moving heads. I don't mean to say like still isn't a bad thing, but there's a lot of power in moving heads, but you're just not putting them on any other type of device. I know I've seen people do a tripod. It just doesn't look quite right. So I don't think it's completely dead, but I think it's become a different market. I think a lot of the high-end guys have started to go, the high-end companies are starting to go a different route. And the ones that are using moving heads are the ones that are using more of the collapsible style. So, but that's about it. There's so many other options, I think, right now that are kind of allowing you that you don't have to go the trussing route like you felt like you may have needed to 5 years ago.
Second part of this question, why? Is it due to, we've talked about time restrictions with getting out of venues. Is it because the look isn't appealing anymore, or is it because we're lazy? Cubbie.
Yes, to all of it.
Yes. I agree. A, B, and C.
Yeah, no,
heavy,
I mean,
heavy on the C.
The ability to, there we go. I think I messed up. The ability to transport, right? Like the big box trussing is just, it takes a lot to do that. It takes pieces to set up. You're hammering it in with these pins and everything else. And I think the other piece that you hit on it, not necessarily lazy, but we're not light programmers. You know, the people who do this really well do really well with it. But if that's not your expertise, and there's been so many new options that you can do with some of your other style lighting, that you don't necessarily need to go to moving heads, and so therefore you don't, because of a light programming, like it all kind of trickles down to say, okay, we're not going to use the stuff that we're going to have to bang together just so that it works.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there's pretty much all three, but that setup part, the teardown, of course, is whatever it is for getting out and that side of it. But the setup of a box truss with the pins and different things is just so intense. I actually bought the totems, the actual truss totems, because I thought this would be a great thing to have. Until I actually had them and went to go do the first show where I put them together on site. When you do it in the office and you do it, oh yeah, look at that, looks nice. Oh, I'll get the next one a little bit later, and then you go into the house and grab a can of Pepsi, come back out, and you put the second one together. And well, I'm going to take a phone call here and talk to somebody while I'm putzing. So it took an hour, but I was doing other things, so I didn't pay attention to it. And then I got to the site, and it's like, oh my gosh, this takes forever to put these things together here.
And the other thing with the ding, ding, ding of hammering those pins in when people are setting up and it's like this nice quiet venue and it's a hall and it echoes. Like as as the client, as the vendors or the staff caterers and stuff are setting up different things, and all of a sudden you just hear ding, 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 and it just keeps echoing. It's like that. It was just one of those things that I know it probably bothered me more than anybody else.
Probably did, but yeah, it is a distinctive ring through the air, that's for sure. All right, let's jump to our next question tonight. Second question tonight. Have you guys ever been performing for a wedding where either the bride or the groom, or maybe both of them, disappeared exceptionally early and were like gone for the night? Just unexpectedly that, oh yeah, they were going to be here till 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, whatever, and it's like 7 o'clock and they're gone. Have you ever had a situation like that?
I had one. It wasn't gone for the night, but it ended up being gone for the night. So basically what ended up happening was that this was early on in my career, and this couple, they realized they forgot their checkbook to pay the venue and everything else. So they ran home to get it. And I don't know where they lived in relation to the venue, but it took them a while to get there and get back, to the point that by the time that they did, and it may have only been 45 minutes, but it felt like it took forever, that their guests went from being 150 to like 20 by the time that they came back. Like they didn't even stick around. Just they're like, oh, they're not here, and I don't know if they're coming back, so we're gonna leave. Like it was just it was miserable. But it was, I mean, they looked at me and they're like, yeah, I guess we're done early tonight.
Cubbie, have you ever had that instance?
Not that I can recall. I mean, I've had photographers take them out for like super long hours.
Sure.
Oh my gosh, and that kills the party. But nothing that, because I always talk about big endings and doing the Piano Man or Friends in Low Places with the bride and the groom in the middle, everybody's in a great big circle of love and singing to them and stuff, and talk about big endings and big beginnings. So I've never had them just walk out on me, or somebody gets sick. I kind of was aware of it, but never that happened to me before.
And mine was situations were similar to yours, Dan, from the standpoint that they were early on when we first started. It was much more common. Lori, she still has the best story of I bet she had a half a dozen weddings over the course of a couple of years where the bride or the groom got so drunk when they went bar hopping between the church and the venue that they never made it. And they tried they never made it into the, and one particular one, the groom did the dollar dance by himself. He did the first dance. He did the first dance, I think, with, I don't remember who he danced with, or if he did it like $1. It was
Maid of honor.
Yeah, it was just this weird, but she was just so in bad shape. My only one that was kind of interesting is that the bride and groom, of course, were going to go from the church to the reception hall, and everyone drove themselves, and they were all driving over, and the bride and groom were gone for an extra half hour, and no one knew where they went. And of course, well, yeah, there was the I don't remember if it was a brother or something of the groom said, well, I got to let you know that you're going to probably hear some weird stories, but they've been kind of saving themselves for this day, and they thought they would. Okay. I don't think we'll be talking about that one on a microphone.
Yeah.
So yeah, those things happen, but I haven't had anything like that in the last 20 years.
Yeah.
Literally, when people are sharing stories about, that, oh, someone got so drunk at their wedding. I just, maybe towards the end of the night they were pretty lit up, but I've not had that bar hopping lit up type of a situation like we used to have on, you know, probably like once a weekend when there were 4 or 5 of us out. One of us would have a story of somebody being way too drunk at the beginning of the meal. So whether it's being
I
policed by
wonder
the church is better, I don't know.
I wonder if you just kind of hit on something though, and then maybe this has something to do with the why. You mentioned they were going from the church to the venue, and there was time for them to go places in between. So many of our weddings now, the ceremony and the reception are on site.
Yeah,
And
very true.
they might do a little bit of time for photos in the middle, but they don't allow themselves time to go and get a drink. Now I have one coming up the end of next month where they kind of said that exact same thing. Like we were going to go down and get our pictures of this place, and it just happens to be a bar, so we figured we might get a drink. And I told them, I said, listen, you can do that. I said, but one drink's going to turn into 5 because you walk in your dress and you're going to have a bunch of people that are going to buy you a drink. You're
Yeah,
not going to leave when
yeah,
you think you are. And so they're kind of nixing that idea. But I think that's part of it. Like people are not going places, so they don't have the I don't want to say they don't have the ability to be overserved, but it's a little bit harder, right? It's unless you're at a venue where the bartenders are basically who can pull a lever. There's going to be some responsibility there that happens in a little bit closer proximity. So there's probably a couple of things that are leading to that, at least from the alcohol and overindulging standpoint early in the night.
you of course, we talked a little bit about the bar hopping thing, which has become less frequent because of exactly, I think, what you're saying, Dan. But I think looking back at over the years, that has been one of the things that has been the most common for killing the crowds. Is that people would go out and, as you mentioned, 1 turns to 5, and it becomes, 15 minutes is all we were going to stop, becomes an hour and 15. And the number of times guests have been like, they were supposed to be here an hour ago and I'm leaving. Well, they haven't served food yet. Yeah, I'm leaving. That, or the protest ones who are going to eat the food because they already brought a gift, but then as soon as they're done, they're going to be like, I'm out of here. But we're going to have fun with the dance. Doesn't matter there.
You waste an hour and a half.
You wasted my time when you should have been here so we could talk. So
When they're waiting, it feels much longer. And it feels like they've been there much longer.
For sure,
And
for
so
sure.
the
Especially
guest
if
is willing to.
you know very few people there, and there's always those little dynamics of. So, all right, let's jump to the next one here. Question 3 tonight is about the cocktail music or dinner time music. There's a trend that we're hearing from more and more DJs about mixing that time, where it's actually maybe doing the picking and playing and segueing songs back and forth. And some people are actually going to the point of still playing some of those kind of upbeat but not dance songs, but actually going through and beat mixing and having a complete kind of an endless flow that way. First off, yes, no, do you guys do anything like that? Or, in my personal case, I've got some really cool playlists that I put together. And in Virtual DJ, I have it, in the auto mix, and I let it go. That's during that time frame, because I've curated this list of really kind of a neat cocktail time that I want that type of thing to play, because I feel it sets up the dance the way I want it to be ready to go when that time comes. So I don't do it, but what have you guys, what's your experience and thoughts?
I think it's my turn. I don't
Yeah,
do
go
it
for it.
either. I mean, I've read on it. I think it sounds really cool, but I'm out dismissing tables. I'm one of those DJs that dismisses tables, talk to the table, team bride, team groom. I will literally carry the bride's plate. So the very first thing I do is I dismiss a head table and 2 family tables, and then I go carry the bride's plate from the buffet to her table, and I'll grab them a drink. That so many people see that, like, oh my God, that is so cool. And then dismissing the remainder of the tables. I'd love, if I ever get a chance where I'm not dismissing tables, I think I've pigeonholed myself because I do you get a lot of referrals into dismissing tables, and a lot of venues know that I do that. I think I pigeonholed myself into dismissing tables till I die.
Yeah, and that's not a bad thing, though. I mean, if especially if the venues like what you do, That
I have a great time with it. Yeah, I
yeah.
talk to every table. Where you from? What's gonna get you on the dance floor? You team bride, you team groom,
Hmm.
using their names, of course. But yeah, just kind of chatting with them. And then you get to the last few tables, you're like, look, I give you a piece of advice when you go to a wedding, don't sit in the back row because you're gonna get dismissed last. So he's trying to sit closer if you're really hungry. Stuff like that. Just kind of talking to people.
Have some fun.
Yeah.
Dan, how about yourself?
I don't. However, I have one coming up that it's expected that I'm going to
Mm.
have something during cocktails. Now, and the reason why I say expected, it came up in our it came up in our consult meeting, and we were talking about different things and trying to figure out, am I going to be a good fit and whatnot. And they're like, during cocktails, like what we really don't want just a song to play and then the next song to play and then the next song to play, right? Like the style of music that we're wanting for this, like we wanted to flow together and we don't want any silence. And so they weren't necessarily talking beat mixing, but they wanted something a little bit more. But I will say this, at the venue that I'm going to be at, that's setup number 3. Setup number 3 does not get a controller and everything ready to go. So what that means is I'm going to be pre-mixing it in my basement, recording it, loading it onto the iPad, and then the iPad's going to play it back. So it's going to have that mix aspect, but it's not going to involve me the day of.
Hmm.
I would encourage anybody, if you're in Cubbie's situation where you're doing a lot of things for the venue, for the couple, whatever might be the case, whether it's for dinner, during cocktails, like cocktails, I'm out there trying to help make sure that they're staying hydrated if they're in the sun and they're dealing with the photographer. I'm lining them up. I'm doing a bunch of different things and I'm not working with anybody else. So there's nobody else to mix for me or to do that for me. I'm doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So I've never mixed because I'm busy. But after having this conversation with the couple, I'm kind of leaning a little bit more towards taking some of those playlists like John's talked about that I've got curated and finding a way to mix them together. And then that's what I'm playing back.
Mm-hmm. That would make sense.
And
Yeah.
maybe not, maybe I only have one that goes an hour, but then it gives me an extra, and then I maybe start doing some fade stuff after that, but it gives me an hour to do all the things that I might want to do.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I really like, and I stole it from Mike Walter, he had at one of the conferences, one of his seminars, he joked and he quickly put up a link that went to his Doors Open music. I happened to see that seminar twice. So the first time I wasn't ready. The second time my camera was ready. And so I got that link and that door is open. I love it. I love the vibe. I love the feel. The song selection is great and it's mixing. So while they're coming in and I'm lining up, I've got 30 minutes of music to do the things that I need to do.
Mm.
So it's really kind of gauged me a little bit to lean towards it. I just have to make myself take the time to actually set up those mixes and record them.
Hmm. Interesting. I
John?
guess I really hadn't thought about doing them in advance like that, but that would actually work.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really flashing back to the days when we were transitioning from from vinyl and we were using tapes. So we were making, because of the having to rewind the tapes, do how you had to do that. We were putting songs in 3. Granted, it was a song, and you would re-record it, so it'd be song, song, song. There was no fade. It was basically just tight. But now we had a 3-song set, so you had 10 minutes of you start this tape and you've got 10 minutes there. You start this tape, these 2 songs are together over here, so that's a 5-minute one, and then you can pop tapes in and out and give yourself a little bit more time, especially with the older music pre-mixed like that or pre-set.
I'm like John. I've pre-curated lists, but they're not mixed like you're gonna do, Dan. That's a really great idea.
Yeah. That could be, because you could do it set it up at different intervals. Like, okay, here's a half-hour version,
Yeah.
here's a 20-minute version, and have some fun with that. Good idea. All right, let's jump to the next question here. Our next question tonight is talking about gear that we have, or pieces of our equipment that we have built in the past. So if you've been in this long enough, well, if you're as long as I've been in this, much of the cool stuff that we have today didn't exist back then. And if you've heard Ben Stowe tell the story of back in the 90s when he started out, his very first lights were cream corn cans, and he built them by hand. He's not the only DJ who did that. I've got 3 different DJ friends in the upper Midwest here who still have coffee can lights or cream corn cans, in their shed that are, hey, this is my first ones, and I built them myself, and it was kind of the badge of honor back then. But is there any piece of gear that you guys have built that basically was not something that you purchased as a completed thing? You had to buy the parts and you built. And I know, Dan, obviously you've talked about one that you've done, but we can see if there's anything beyond that that you have built. So, Cubbie, were you starting this one, or is Dan?
I can start it because this can be real short.
Okay,
no, I'm not at all. I am about as handy as a foot. So, but I do remember the days, Colorado Sight and Sound. Remember that guy used to come up with those boxes and he'd make these wooden boxes and put these big par cans in them, and he had all 4 of them at once. And then I never built them. I bought them, but yeah, I'm not very handy at all. So not, yeah. Mm-mm.
Dan, what things have you built over the years?
So, Mr. Handyman.
I'm gonna be kind of like Cubbie. I haven't done a lot. I've never really considered myself very handy, despite my last name. That's not something I'm an expertise in any way, shape, or form. Yeah, it took a little bit, but it's all right. But no, so the only extent I would probably say, I started dabbling this a little bit ago when I wanted to have a DJ coffin for my controller, and there wasn't anything that gave me all the things that I wanted to be able to fit into one size. And when the style went to that coffin setup, like I was used to the 19-inch rack mounts, so that were like 8 spaces underneath, right? And when we went to the coffin, we didn't have that. So I modified the one that I had to be able to give me an extra rack space. It allowed me to mount my half-wave antennas on top. And I had everything ready to go with that, thanks to that modification. That was the only other thing I've ever done other than my booth. And that was, and again, very similar idea was, at the time I really didn't know of people who you could buy them from, that were local enough that would have made it doable. And so I made the booth using some ideas that people had handed out. So those are about my extent of those 2 things.
So the first thing we built was a coffin. It was because 19-inch rack spaces were kind of becoming a thing, but all those home CD players and a turntable you could make. So we basically made a coffin that was, 4 feet wide. So you had basically a set of rack spaces here and a set of rack spaces there. And we had turntable, mixer, tape decks, and a couple of CD players in this thing. It weighed like 80 pounds, and people would say, "Oh, there's the dog coffin," as we would carry this thing in, because it had handles on the sides, and it would take 2 of us to carry this thing in. That was our first. And then we built a variation of that for the amp box, which had it was a wheeled thing that it was made out of 2x4s and had big handles on it, and it would handle. We had the crossover and the it was just 2 CS 800s in that, which are the PV amplifiers that weighed 70 pounds or whatever they were. This is the old CS 800s. And if they had the little module that you could plug into the back, and that's where the crossover was in there. So there was no crossover. It was just basically you drop the 2 cords, plug it in, and that was a beast. That was a beast also. Cubbie, you mentioned the box lights. When the very first time we saw those down in Las Vegas, I oh my gosh, this is awesome, but I'm not paying that much for them. So
he was high.
Yeah. And so he came home and started to build boxes like this, and putting cans in them, and then dropping all the cords out of the back of it and putting a dimmer pack on there, and then having it all synced up. So at one time our light show had 2 boxes that sat up on the speakers, that we made those wooden boxes up on top of the speakers that had 4 floods in it. And then on top of the floods were a light show of J.C. Whitney 12-volt beacons. And those were all controlled by a homemade switch box that was powered, they're 12-volt fed into it. And then you had these little momentary switches that you could play like a piano. We built all that. And then And then down below us in the middle was a box that had 8 floodlights in there that were all, kind of connected with that to the dimmer pack. So you had all the floods that could, there were 16 floods that were chasing, and then you had those other lights. But we built a lot of different boxes, and some of them worked, some of them didn't. Some people mentioned, of course, building actual pin spots and amps and different things. We tried building speakers. I knocked off the bag end subwoofer design. Basically, took and built the identical box to it, and it went so well we ended up building like a dozen of them, and we used 2. So I had all these cabinets that we built, and we're like, okay, so as soon as we get big and we need extra speakers, we're just going to go and use put the woofer in there, and we've gotten I think I ended up throwing them out and to the burn pile or something. I don't even remember what ended up
Last year.
Yeah, it was actually last weekend. I was trying to before the snow. 'Cause, it's only been 25 years since we built those. So, and then I wanted to build this big club sub that was a dual sub. So I made this huge box and probably had what would have been in 2020 like $300 worth of plywood. Yeah, 2 sheets. But this is this huge thing. It was 8 feet it was 8 feet long. It was 3 feet tall. And 3 feet deep, and I've tried putting subs in there at different, the cones at different, woofers at different, and I never could figure it out. And then somebody said, oh, there's sound waves, and there's ways of, measuring, and there's all these, and it's like, I don't want to think that much. It went in the stack, and it found its way to the burn pile. I think it's, last week also. And then
You talk about last week. I had the same problem where I'm going through my garage, got an old gear, going, gosh, should I keep that? Should I not keep that? I mean, I've had that mixer for 20 years. It is a good mixer, So
yeah, exactly.
I had the same problem as you do, getting rid of stuff.
Well, I had when we were expanding and such, I ended up buying some of these Newmark mixers that had a little Chaos pad, and they were early versions that had XLR out, and it's like, this is a nice little mixer. And I ended up buying 3 of them at the time because we were going to be expanding, and we were using some PV mixers at the time, PV 9072s. And it's like, okay, we want to transition to that, 2 things that use XLR. So I bought these things, and they sat in there in the shelf in the box, and I pulled them out and tested it, and it's like, okay, great. But then we went and bought Vestex instead, which were a better quality mixer. I ended up finding those things like 17 years later, whatever it was, still in the box, and I opened them up, and I think one of the 3 worked. The others were dead. And it was just years of being, in storage, and they weren't even stored on the climate controlled side of the shed. It was in the cold side, we'll call it. Yeah. So it's like, oh, well, I guess that answers the question. They're all going to the garbage. There's no, yeah. Building of gear. That was something for a minute there. And the last thing I probably built that I actually use, it's probably been 15, 20 years since I think I've become Cubbie.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's nothing. So Dan, you're the most handy one now in the last number of years. I learned my lesson the hard way after having stacks of the crap, and it's like, why do I still have these knockoff SKB amp racks out here? Have I ever done anything? No. Burn them next week. We'll get them. All right, let's jump to our next question. There. Okay, for our next question, what's one of your all-time favorite wedding shtick or wedding activities that you've maybe done for years, and it's one of those things that still works today? You've maybe modified it a little bit, but basically something that you really enjoy doing, and it still works well for you.
Go Cubbie.
Okay. It is dumb. I'm going to preface this, but it is dumb. Yeah, in judgment-free zone right here, okay, ladies and gentlemen. So I set up the anniversary dance, invite all the married couples out. John and Lori are really excited to share this anniversary dance. They can finally do it now with all their married couples. And our goal this evening, ladies and gentlemen, is to whittle down from the longest married couple to the newlyweds on the dance floor at the same time. And we get everybody out there, and you set the mood. It's gonna be really kind of cool. And then I literally hit Baby Got Back by Sir Mix-a-Lot. Like, I like big butts and I cannot lie. And people just start laughing and jamming. I'm like, I see you. And then I just fade into my song that I do for my anniversary dance. And it just gets them, just like you set the mood, and then they just laugh and chuckle, and and you point at somebody because they're going hard. And it just, I don't know, it's dumb. I told you it's dumb.
Mm-hmm. But
I didn't get it. Oh, finally got it. I was watching Dan's face the whole time, and I didn't get it till just now. I got the smile when I said it was dumb.
I'm gonna, you know what? I was trying to think of some different ones, and that's why I wanted you to go first, because I had to think through some different things, and I'm gonna stick with the anniversary dance as well. And I think part of the reason is there are some other things that I used to do, say with a garden bouquet, and we just don't do those anymore, right? You know what I mean?
Right.
So I feel like they don't hold up because we don't do them. So I'm gonna give two. So the one that I'm gonna do first is gonna be related to the anniversary dance, very similar, of the idea of getting people up there, and I invite them all out, and I start playing the song, and I don't tell them that we're gonna whittle down right away. I just get them all up there, and but then I basically say, all right, it's time that we find out which couple's been married the longest. But before you can step to the side off the dance floor, what I want you to do is you are going to show Bobby and Susie what it looks like when someone who's been married as long as you have kisses. And everybody, quick pause. And then, yeah, that's right. We're going to have a whole bunch of smooching going on. And so you get a little chuckle or whatever. And then, like, we start off usually right with the couple. And then I'll get a couple more, and depending upon how they feed off of it, I'm like, listen, we need to set an example for them. You've been married a little bit longer, you should be smooching. And then the next thing you know, guy is dipping his wife like halfway down to the floor, picking her up. And then I love to always get the one set of the parents that I've connected with better, whichever it just without fail. I always have one set of parents out of the two that I end up connecting with better. And I'll call their year, and they'll kiss. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I missed that. Can you do it again? And of course they'll kiss it again. I'm sorry, I still missed it. Can you do it again? And by that point, then they're like, okay, we're just gonna lay it on him. Because we realize we're just having some fun with them. So those, I mean, like they're sticky, right? That's what John said.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted some shtick. The other thing isn't so much shtick, but this one tends to work well. I use it a lot for my introductions. I picked it up off of Adam Scuba a few years ago when I was at a wedding that he did. I used to just bring him in, right, and have everybody having a good old time. But for the grand introduction, sorry, I wasn't mentioning where I was at. So as grand introductions, I was bringing all the couples, and I would get I'd get the bride and groom or the newlyweds. I'd have them come in, and then I would just kind of move on. And so there's that moment of climax when they first walk through the door, then dies by the time they get to the head, and I don't carry that energy. And so what ends up happening is I get them to come in, and then when they're getting like, I don't know, 10 feet from where their table is going to be, let's hear it. Bobby and Susie got married. And then all of a sudden you hear this big eruption of clapping and cheering again. And it really works well because you get that energy fed back in at just the right time. At just that time, because they're not to the table yet, right? You don't want to wait till they're at the table, because then it's like, well, we actually need to get quiet because we're going to move on to the next thing. But he gives it just as they're getting ready. And then it also helps with that awkwardness, because no fail, when they're getting behind the table, it's always like, okay, we're scooting in, or let me hold the chair back for her, whatever might be the case. So by having that still clapping and that applause, it allows that getting to the seat aspect to move a little bit smoother. So those are mine. That was probably three of them, actually, technically.
Yeah, somewhere.
No
In
one's
there.
John, how
counting.
about you?
So I'm going to go back to the introductions, but mine is kind of a takeoff from what Todd Mitchum used to, what he did when he first came onto the scene, and the whole idea that he had of basically, the idea of stopping things. Wait, you can do better. Okay, this is a practice round, and I've talked about this in other times. But so we're going to introduce the wedding party. We've got the wedding party lined up, and I've got them back there. I come back onto the microphone. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be introducing the wedding party in just a moment. I'm going to be bringing the wedding party through that door. But before we do that, we need to make sure that this room is ready and prepared for what's going to be coming your way here. So what we need to do is we need to practice, and then we're going to introduce the wedding party. So I need need a couple to stand in and be my Bobby and Susie. So I generally look for 2 big burly guys, and that becomes my bride and groom, and I walk them over to the doorway in which the wedding party will be coming through. So then I get everyone ready. Okay, now, ladies and gentlemen, this is the way it's going to happen. I want you to visualize the wedding party is going to be walking through this door. We just finished with the best man and matron of honor. And now I'm going to ask you to please rise and put your hands together for Bobby and Susie. And, everyone stands and claps, yay, and the 2 guys walk through the door, and okay, everyone, just have a seat now. Okay, Bobby and Susie, now, did you feel the love from the room? Was the energy to the level that you think that they deserve for this day? Oh, no, they could do it much better. So the idea becomes is that, okay, well, if we were playing golf, this would have been perfect. But we're not. This isn't a golf. This is the first time of introducing them to the room. You guys have got. So you can play with it a little bit, and then, of course, they come back in. Sometimes if you've got 2 guys who are going to be fun, they come back into the room and are doing something completely different. I've seen them come in and there's clothes flying. I've had one carrying the other, piggyback ride with that. 2 guys came through and they got in and they actually did a big kiss just because they were wanting, again, to play with the crowd and have some fun with it. So, it works very well. Obviously, if you're tight on time, it does take a couple of minutes to do. So that can be there's times where I've talked to the bride and groom and they're like, we saw you do this. They're warming up the crowd and we love it. And we want you to do it. Great. Just keep in mind, if your venue is ready, if you guys are late and the venue is very anal about, they have to be right here with the food. So we have to be done by 6:00 because that's when the food's hitting the table. I may have to cut it. And I hate to say that, but this is just how it is. And there is a venue that has happened time and time again. It's nothing against the venue. We want to be, food's got to be at 6 because I've got a second room over here that's at 6:30. It's just how it is. So, but it goes over well. It's been something that I've used for 25 years. Off and on, about 6 times generally. It ends up being, we plan for it more often than not, but then sometimes things happen and it doesn't get done. So the practicing of the introduction of the wedding party. Okay, let's go to our next question, guys. Next question. Somebody asked, I saw this, I think today actually they posted it, wondering about what would be the recommended decibel level for a wedding dance floor. And Ben Stowe actually answered this one in one of the shows that we did. So we'll go to that. But first, the question I really wanted to put to you guys is that even a concern? Do you guys sit there and think, well, man, I don't know if I have enough decibels for this dance floor? Is that something that comes to your mind at any point in time when you're getting ready to perform, when you perform, any of that? Dan, I'm going to have you start this one.
Having enough or having too much?
Having what it should be. It really is a question, but does that come to your mind? When you're thinking in that lines, what does come to mind when it comes to sound that way?
So not numbers, but just am I going to have enough sound with what I have for the number of people I have or the venue that I have? Things of that nature. So that is something that comes into mind, right? So I have my Evolve 50s. I use them 95% of my weddings. But there's a couple venues that they're real high ceilings. It's a really big room. And I want the sound to throw. There's a couple times where I'm working with a real young couple and they've talked about really wanting that club feel. And yes, these can hit, but not like my 18s. So that's when I have those types of situations, I concern myself more with that and volume than I do with necessarily the actual numbers. And again, also to the idea, right? So the great thing about the Evolves is a wide spread. If I don't have a real wide room and I have a real long room, I'm going to want something that throws. So those are the thoughts that go into my mind more than a venue and decibel levels, because I don't run into not enough as a venue requirement. A venue issue I usually have, it's too much, if that was their role or something.
Mm-hmm. Cubbie, when it comes to sound, what are your thoughts as far as how are you thinking about that? Are you thinking?
Yeah. I don't want to beat a dead horse. It's exactly everything Dan said.
Mhm.
When I talked about numbers with the bride and groom, do I need a bigger, is it a longer room? Stuff like that, the venue type things. Yeah, so yeah, I don't want to beat a dead horse, like, but everything, literally what Dan just said.
And I think that's
I mean,
there's the part of you guys went there. Thank you. That's exactly where I was hoping you guys would go. Is you could have 110 decibels, which is the number that Ben Stowe said that on a dance floor, if he's dancing with his wife, he would like to have the decibels between 104 and 110 max. Any more than that is going to be painful for him. Now, because of the room, as both of the guys just mentioned, it's going to vary. Some speakers are going to be able to attain that very easily in a specific type of room, where that same set of speakers in a different type of room would be next to impossible to attain that type of a sound pressure. That would be room filling or dance floor filling, and obviously location of speakers compared to. I think the idea that I need to have a certain decibel is really misguided. I think I could even go as far as to say, as someone who's spent a lot of time doing testing and checking decibel meters out on different speakers, there are times where the speakers, and I'm testing, it's like 110 decibels. And it's like, well, that's not really that loud technically, but yet it's to the point of it being uncomfortable to listen to. And I would not want to be in that loud of a volume for a whole night. It's just not comfortable. It's not even comfortable for the tests that I do. I think those types of things make it so that we're looking at the numbers and not really looking at the art of how can we fill a space with sound and do it properly. Hence, I can fill spaces with my two Evolves in those two Everse 8s. I can fill a lot of spaces and have a lot of flexibility to be able to give a nice coverage of both microphones and kind of background music and then the dance with those four. And there's times where I could be in a room with higher end speakers that are doing different things, and they four high end speakers that couldn't do what those could do. So it's just learning how to use your sound system and use it to the variety of different spaces that you do effectively. I think is a big part of it. Okay, let's jump to one more question here before we wrap up. Okay, saw someone throw out a number if you were given $400 to spend at Guitar Center. Well, that's as Cubbie, when I mentioned it before the show, he's like, yeah, I can't get anything for $400. So I wanted to put it out. If somebody gave you guys $1,000 just to said, here, go spend this on your business, go buy anything you want for your business. What would you do? What would you go and invest in, or what would you do with that?
Me, am I first?
Go ahead, Cubbie,
Sure.
because you were thinking about this one earlier. So
Yeah, I know we talked about it earlier, and even $1,000 doesn't even get you a lot of things. It won't get you a new light bar, So what I would probably do, honestly, with $1,000 is go to a trade show. I'd go get education. I'd go to MEX. I'd go to Midwest CG's Live, Marquee, DJX, Bo. Couldn't get into the collective with that, but you could, depending on your location, I'm sure you could hit one of those four shows for close to, you room with somebody, you're not eating extravagant dinners. If you do have to fly in through Southwest at 400, or if you want to fight a Spirit or Frontier, even cheaper than that, or possibly drive if you're close enough. But I think for $1,000, I'd probably, and especially if I'd never been to a trade show or an educational series, I would go do something educational, because that's gonna help me book more events than a stupid light or a stupid, something else.
Dan.
Really don't.
Okay, you need more time.
Okay, yes, I do know. I do know. Okay, it took me a second to kind of think of something, and this is borderline to that price. I would pick up another in-ear monitor system. So I'm a big proponent of the wireless setups and using that, especially for ceremonies. I hands down, I think it's the best way that you can go for what you need to do and the way our ceremonies are lately. The problem is, because I use that in my ceremony rack, I don't have anything for my reception rig. I have some wireless setups, but they're kind of a pain to kind of set up and run and use, and they're
Sure.
not as strong and powerful as the in-ear monitor systems are. So I would pick up another one so that I have the ability to do that with the reception when I had that speaker that needs to go in the weird place, or I need to fill in the back end of the room, and I want to send a wireless signal back to it. So there's my piece. And I know that those of you that have priced them, you're like, you can't get it for that. It depends. You can get close.
So I was going a similar direction, Dan, with the little Sennheiser belt packs, the transmitter receiver for bouncing audio, because I've got a few of those and I love those things. And having an extra one, but then when Cubbie then actually was the responsible. He was the adult in the room, and
Instead of buying toys at Christmas, y'all.
Yeah, exactly. We're buying the toys, and Cubbie's like, if I learn how to, and then I can buy more toys next time. And there's that guy in the crowd. But as he made a very good point. I mean, that would have been for surely, 10 years ago would have been like, oh yeah, that would have been hands down. There's a part of me that should feel more guilty that I didn't come up with that one as my first lead. But on the other side is I really like those wireless belt packs that transmit audio. So,
and after you said that, I'm like, shit, yeah, that's a good answer.
We're all over the board,
man. I do. I mean, I love my shows too. Like I said, don't get me wrong. And we all three go to shows and we enjoy them and we really promote education no matter where you get it. And I know you're getting a majority through us here at DJNTV, but that would be something that I could go actually talk to Andy Ebon and Andy will sit and talk to you in the hallway if you have a question about sales. And if I get more sales, I can get more business. If I learn to mix better, if I do more marketing, if I do more TikTok trends, whatever it may be, I know I can turn around and buy those toys easier.
Mm-hmm. Very much so. Very much so. Mikey Mike just threw a question up. We're going to hit that one quick, and then we'll wrap here. That was the ending. We didn't want the ending of the show yet. That wasn't what that was. That was supposed to be a commercial or the next question. Mikey Mike put in there basically. I'm going to paraphrase this or what have you. It looks like that the venue's got a really crappy layout and the DJ booth is like in a separate room from where the main is. I'm not sure if that means that they're having like the dinner and everything, and then the dance and the bars in that room are a different room, and then they have to come into this room where it's the dance floor and the DJ, or which I've had that one numerous times, or I had one situation where the DJ was like in this little closet room. It had big glass windows. It was like a sound booth for a church, but it wasn't a church. It was kind of a supper club. But the idea they had is that way you're not in any of the pictures and you're not looking bad for the bride's day. It's like, so.
Have you seen the box I made?
Exactly. Have you seen my lights? I mean, these are some of the best J.C. Whitney lights you can find right here.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Actually, I think I still have those out in the shed. Most of the stuff I did give, but I think those things are going to be, museum someday, so they can have the amber beacons spinning. It's going to be great. Crappy setups. Have you guys ever run into a situation like that where you basically were, because of the way the venue was, you were in a different location that was just painful to work with?
Yes, not the glass room closet type of setup, but yeah, there's been numerous ones over the years. There's one place that I play at often. In fact, where we just did the prom this past weekend. It's a venue that I like. It's got 3 rooms to it. The main dance floor is in the middle room, but the dinner is all in the back room. And so now for that one, I do multiple setups so that I have a setup for the dinner area, but we have to bring everybody into the middle room for dancing, right? That's one of the hard parts of that. There's another venue that stopped doing it because they changed owners, and now they're back to doing weddings where the dancing is outside on their deck, porch, whatever you want to call it. The dinner is inside, and it doesn't matter what it's doing out. Like the one is in the one and the other is in the other. There's no overlap. That one's just a pain because it's like getting them to move rooms is one thing, but getting them to go inside or outside is a whole other. And that's one that's definitely difficult, but you got to do what you got to do in some of those cases. And it's just, you got to look at how can I be creative? What can I do to give the guests a reason to switch their location? And that's what I talk with my couples about. What can we do to overcome this? You're in this situation where they're going to be in a different room than where you want them. What are we going to do to want them to leave where they're at? Because they're going to be comfortable. You need to make it so they want to leave it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think we've all kind of played in different situations like that. The fine line is trying not to be that DJ. Like I've got to be here, and working with the venue and coming out with a plan. And if you've never been to the venue before, if you have the opportunity to do an on-site check, go out there, look it over, and make your plan of attack from there, and then meet again with the bride and the groom, and be forthright and honest. I mean, obviously they booked it, they know what they got into. They just might not know what the audio, things could be. So say, look, these are hurdles I'm going to have to overcome for your evening, just so that it could end up costing you more money because I've got to set, a third system up or whatever, depending if you're not package pricing or whatever. But just say, look, this is what we're going to have to overcome, like Dan said, and how are we going to get them over there?
We had one venue that it was very common. They had the bar, and it was literally a doorway that people would have to go through. So the sound just wouldn't go if you were trying to blast the sound. So putting speakers in there was one option, obviously, but that even didn't work very well. So you would have the situation where the people were in the back room dancing, or they were up in the front at the bar. And one of the weddings, I had recommended the bride and groom is like, see if they have a portable bar and if they could bring, because they had never done that. They had never set a portable bar back in the where the dance was, and the bride and groom had insisted upon that because they saw the logic in that. Turns out that venue since they had never done that, they had never had the additional sales, and that wedding was a smaller wedding, but because they had alcohol right there next to the dance floor, the venue ended up selling. So it became kind of that became their package, that they now had a portable bar in the back room that went with that, and it was kind of a neat thing that it's like, oh wow, finally, because now everyone would stick in their room because they could get their drinks right there and be part of the night. And then the biggest problem became is when you made the announcement for the dollar dance, and then people were like, oh, and they ran to the bar and they're like, can you break this 20 for dollars? And it's like, so we had to make the announcement, the bar cannot give you change for your dollar dance stuff, so you just have to give the 20s to the bride and the groom. And
I haven't done that in a few years, but the last time I did, I said, look, we're not even doing a dollar dance. That can't get you anything nowadays, ladies and gentlemen. It's going to be 5, 10, or 20.
Yeah, there you go. Good stuff.
Because you do have those old farts that come up to a single dollar like that. Woo!
Oh, yeah. It's like, okay, you get 3 seconds. Ready to go. Oh, sorry, you're done.
Yeah.
You get your dollars worth. Oh, let's see. So tomorrow night, we've got Ben Stowe coming back again. First, you're going to have Big Daddy coming in with Joe Zahn tomorrow night. And then we've got Ben Stowe coming in, talking a little bit, hitting another topic in our wedding ceremony type discussions we're doing. I think tomorrow night is talking microphones and what's the best ones for different areas. We've talked about microphones before, but we wanted to do a quick short one on kind of an updated version of that. I've got a couple of other videos that'll be dropping in the morning. You guys can check those out at the Disc Jockey News main channel, which is youtube.com/Disc Jockey News. And if you want to follow the live stream shows, it's out at DJNTV.com. Let's see, DJNTV.com/@DJNTV shows. They just wouldn't make it easy for us there. So thank you guys for being with tonight. Looks like we got a good crowd. Yeah, I'm going to get things ready, and you guys can take it from there, Dan.
Right. Well, we do definitely appreciate everybody taking their time. Thank you very much for the comments in the chat room, as well as the questions that were being thrown there as well. We hope you all had a wonderful weekend, and get ready for your week, and we'll see you next Monday, because I can't talk.